Hi guys, it's Adrian here. This video today is going to be about showing you the absolute basics of knitting. So how to cast on, get your first stitch on the needle, how to do the knit stitch and the purl stitch to get you started. I'm not going to show you how to bind off in this video. That will come in future. I did get a request from Shane on Facebook to talk about tension, and I think that's a great idea because I know one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I started knitting was to get really tense and the stitches were really tight and it was very difficult and really unenjoyable. So thanks for the question, Shane. I guess I'll go over a few pointers about tension now. And the first one might seem a little obvious, but it's be in a good mood, be relaxed, don't be tense or angry. We tend to carry a lot of tension in our neck, shoulders, arms and hands, and those are kind of your main instruments for knitting. So make sure that you're in a pretty placid state, and if not, try and do something to relax you. Knitting is a good relaxing pastime anyway. The next thing will be to just be aware of the tension in those areas that I spoke about before. Make sure that your neck and your shoulders and arms and hands are nice and loose and limber. I kind of take the knit with Xanax approach, which is to just imagine that your whole body is under the effect of a relaxant, so that you can't really hold the tension, especially when you're starting out and it's something new and you're not really sure about it. You can feel quite tense, but just try and make sure you don't keep the tension in your arms. The next thing is to go through the steps. When you're starting out particularly, you don't need to fly through your stitches. We tend to tug and put more pressure on the yarn when we do that, and it can make the stitches really quite tight. And my final point is to just not tug on the yarn, fight the urge to pull it and make everything nice and neat and tight. When you knit a stitch, it will actually tighten up as you knit subsequent stitches, so there's no need to keep it tight when you're knitting. I'm going to demonstrate more of this when I show you the knit stitch and the purl stitch as well. Just quickly, I wanted to talk to you about the difference between the quick knit videos, which are the very short, brief videos where I'm not speaking, and these ones here. This is designed to be the kind of class for knitting, so I'll talk to you about how the stitches are formed and how you can keep your tension good, go through every step in detail. The quick knit is if you've already sort of watched this or someone else's video and you think, I can't remember how to do the knit stitch, I'm just going to quickly have a look at that video and you'll see me demonstrating all of the same steps, but just in a really short period of time so that it doesn't delay you getting on the needles. When I talk about, say, the 5 steps of doing a knit stitch, you'll notice in the quick knit that I'll pause briefly a few times, and that will correspond to those 5 steps as well, so the videos should hopefully match up. Alright, enough jabber, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to start off doing the slip knot. It is just exactly as it sounds. It's a knot that can slip, so it can become tighter or looser depending on what you want. So when you do a long tail cast on, the first step is to make a slip knot. Now with the long tail cast on, you're going to need quite a bit of a tail, hence the name long tail. So I'm just going to measure out some random piece of tail length, but you'll actually determine that by the size of your project and how many stitches need to be cast on. So if you've only got a project with 20 stitches, you'll only need a short tail. If you've got something with 200, you'll need a long tail. I'm not going to show you in this video exactly how to calculate close to what you need, but it's safest to just give yourself an ample tail for the purposes of this video. Alright, so it's really easy. So what we do is we get the yarn that's in the left hand, and the yarn coming off to the right here is connected to the ball. So we're just going to bring our left hand over our right hand and create a loop like that. And then put our index finger and thumb through the loop from the back. Pick up the piece of yarn that's still connected to the ball. Grab both strands and then just tighten it. Not too much. We just want to get that knot nice and snug. Then you can drop the tail and pull on the yarn that's connected to the ball, and that's going to snug it right up to your finger. And then it's just as simple as getting your needle and pulling on both strands there. Now that actually puts you in perfect position to start doing the long tail cast on. So what you're going to do is wrap both fingers, or the 4th and 5th fingers of your hand, left hand, around both strands, and then spread the strands apart with your index finger and thumb. And then what we're going to do is stabilize the slip knot that's already on the needle. Then we're going to bring the tip underneath the thumb loop, over the index finger loop, and then we're just going to bring the tip of the needle through that thumb loop again. Now we'll drop the loop off the thumb and tighten both strands, and that's the long tail cast on. So I'll show you both of those techniques again. So again, passing the left hand over the right, index finger and thumb through the back loop, pick up the strand that's connected to the ball, pull tight on both, not too tight, drop the tail and pull on the right side piece of yarn. So we're just going to tighten that up to the needle, nice and gentle, and this is where that sort of tension issue comes in. We don't want to make really tight knots like that, because then we find it really difficult to get our needles in. So keeping our arms and shoulders and hands and everything nice and relaxed, so we just till it's snug. It can still move up and down really easily on the needle, and that's what you want. So 2 strands of yarn here, we're going to grab them in the last 2 or 3 fingers of our left hand, kind of making a gun shape with our fingers. We're going to spread both bits of yarn, and then this looks like a slingshot almost. So we're going to go under the thumb loop, over the index finger loop, through the thumb loop with the tip of the needle, drop the yarn off the thumb loop and tighten them up again. And that's long tail cast on. So I'm going to go ahead and cast on a bunch of stitches here. Alright, so I haven't cast on too many stitches here, but let's say that's all the number of stitches that I need to cast on. What I need to do now is turn my work so that the left hand needle becomes the needle that has all of the stitches on it. The right hand needle is also sometimes called the working needle, because that's the one that does all of the movement of the stitches. An easy way to know whether or not you're on the right side or the wrong side of your work is that if the tail yarn is situated at the bottom right hand side of your work, this part of the fabric is the right side, generally speaking. There are some patterns that will change this. Now the right side versus wrong side basically just means the nicest part of the fabric. Some stitches are not double-sided. They'll look good only on the one side of the work, and on the other side they won't look as nice. So that's why they call it the right side and the wrong side. Now, for the purposes of this video, everything that's from between me and the needle is the front of the work, and everything that's behind the needle is behind the work, or the back of the work. Alright, so I'm going to show you the knit stitch now, and the first step of that is to tension the yarn around your hand. Now you can look up many ways of doing this, and a lot of them will show some variation of twisting around index fingers and weaving through. That's too confusing for me. I'll make it too tight. So basically I just wrap it around my hand and then I'm good to go. So I'll pick up my needle. So what we want to do is have the yarn behind the needle that we're holding in our right hand, and this is for the knit stitch. So if we look at the very first stitch that's on our needle, we want to go into the left hand side of it. So we put the tip in the left hand side through to the back, and if I change my angle, I don't know how well you can see that, but we're just going through the front leg, they call it, of the stitch. The next step is to hold both of the needles in the forefinger and thumb of your left hand, basically so that you can then maneuver the yarn around the back of the right hand needle tip. So you're bringing that between the two needles. Then with your index finger, not pushing because that will get painful really quickly, just gently guiding the tip of the needle down and around the left hand needle. So basically you want to make sure that the tip of this needle is always in contact with the left hand needle. And you should see that we've ended up with a loop of yarn on the right hand needle. That's our new stitch. So the very last step is to just slide the old stitch off the needle. Now, it looks a bit loose and messy, and some people will want to tighten it and pull it up like this. That's probably a mistake when you're starting out, because that's how you get really tight and tense knitting. So just let it nice and loose. Don't worry too much about getting perfect tension right now. So let's do that again. The tip of the right hand needle going into the left leg of the stitch on the left hand needle. Bring the yarn around the right needle tip. Don't pull it tight like that, just let it nice and relaxed. Bring that loop forward and slide the old stitch off. So I'll show you that a few more times. So that's through the left hand side, wrap around the right needle tip, guide the stitch through and slip the old one off. Okay, so as I said before, we want the stitches that we need to knit on the left-hand needle, and we need our working needle nice and empty. So the simplest solution here is to just swap hands, and that's called turning the work. So as you can see, the tail yarn is on the bottom left, and we said if it was the right side of the fabric, it would be on the bottom right. So we know now that we're on the wrong side of the fabric. And what we want to knit on this side is the purl stitch. Now the purl stitch and the knit stitch are actually just exactly the same thing. So when I create knit stitches, you won't be able to see it here. On the right side, they'll look like nice flat V stitches. And on the back, they will have little bumps, and that's a purl stitch. So on the right side of the work, it's a knit stitch, but on the wrong side, it's a purl. And if we want to continue that pattern, we'll need to purl on the wrong side. So I'll show you how to do that. And it's basically the exact same stitch, just done all back to front. So the first step is to get your yarn and make sure that it is in front of your right needle. So what we're going to do is, instead of going left to right, we're going to go right to left and bring the needle from the back or behind the stitch to in front of the stitch. This can take a little getting used to. Just make sure that you're only picking up the front leg of the stitch. Now we pinch both needles between the forefinger and the thumb of the left hand as before. And we're doing the exact same thing as before too. We're going to bring this yarn around the back loop, the back end of the right hand needle, but the right needle is actually in the front here. So we go between the two and just bring it around the back of the right needle. Now we're going to guide the stitch backwards with our thumb. So continue to keep contact with the tip of your right needle on the surface of the left needle, and you'll see we've created a stitch on the right needle, and we're just going to slide that off and repeat the same process again. So right to left through the back end, wrap the yarn around the right needle tip, guide it backwards, slip it off. So I'll just show you that a few more times. So remember, through the back, pinch both needles between your forefinger and thumb, wrap, guide, and slip off. All the while keeping nice and relaxed, not tugging on the yarn. An important thing to note is that when you knit a stitch, if you feel like it's a bit loose, don't really tighten it up there, because when you knit your subsequent stitches, it's going to naturally tighten that stitch up. And if you're continuing to tug and pull on the yarn, you'll end up with very dense fabric that's really difficult to get the needles into. So that's an automatic thing at the end of the row, is to just turn the work. Now sometimes you might, put your work down and pick it up again and it's all tangled around. The simplest thing to do is grab the yarn and just gently pull forward in front of the needle until it's all untangled. Now you'll notice that the stitch here is kind of loose. It won't stay that way all the time, and fight the urge to bring the yarn over the work, and it's not really doing it here at the moment. But sometimes we find that if we tuck the yarn over, we get a nice neat edge. But what we do there is, instead of having one stitch, we end up creating two legs. And that's a really, really effective way of creating this ever-growing triangle of fabric. And you think, I just have absolutely no idea how I did that or why it's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and knit a little bit more. So we'll go here and just knit some more stitches. So you can see that fabric we're creating of nice flat V shapes. And on the back we're getting bumps, sort of in a zigzag pattern. So that's the Purl stitch, and this is on the wrong side of the work. And this is what the knit stitch looks like, and that's on the right side of the work. Now this is a stitch pattern called stockinette. It's pretty much one of the most common stitch patterns you can get, and I guarantee you if you're wearing clothing while watching this video that you're going to have something on that is stockinette, be it a t-shirt or something like that. So very, very good stitch pattern to know. Okay, and that's basically it. Get knitting, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Okay guys, there you have it. We've covered the slip knot, the long tail cast on, knit stitch and the purl stitch in today's video. If you do need a refresher on any of those techniques, use the quick knit videos as much as you need. Hopefully they'll be really helpful in getting those techniques down pat really quickly. If there's anything that you think I haven't covered or anything that you want to see me cover, please let me know down in the comments below. I can get a follow-up video done, and I can also just tailor this to what you guys want to see. So if you really want to see the bind off next or cast off, which is how to get your work off the needles, then let me know and that's what we'll do. Alright, thanks for watching, bye.